All right, what I'm about to share is going to sound absolutely impossible, but I need you to hear me out. Not too long ago, I had a direct encounter with Jesus that turned everything I believed about those 3 days between his death and resurrection completely upside down. I know how this sounds, trust me. I've been questioning my own sanity since it happened. But what he revealed to me about hell, about where he really went during those missing days, fundamentally changes how we understand the depths of God's love for us. To understand what happened, we have to go back to where this question first started burning in my heart. This is going to be a long story, so I ask that you bear with me, because the journey to this answer has been years in the making. It all began when I was just a kid, maybe 8 years old, sitting in Sunday school, listening to Mrs. Patterson tell us about Jesus rising from the dead on Easter morning. She talked about Good Friday, about Jesus dying on the cross, and then about Easter Sunday when he came back to life. But even as a little boy, something bothered me about that story. There were 3 days in between, and nobody really talked about what happened during those 3 days. Mrs. Patterson just said Jesus descended into hell like it was a footnote, like it wasn't the most terrifying, confusing part of the whole story. I raised my hand and asked, what did Jesus do in hell for 3 days? She got this uncomfortable look on her face and said, well, honey, that's one of God's mysteries. But that answer never satisfied me. As I grew up, that question never left me. I'd hear preachers mention the Apostles' Creed, he descended into hell, but they'd rush past it, eager to get to the resurrection part. I'd read theologians who debated whether hell meant the grave or the actual place of torment. Some said he went to free the righteous dead from Abraham's bosom. Others said he proclaimed victory over Satan. But none of these explanations felt complete. They felt like theological guesswork, and my heart needed something more real, more personal. The question became even more urgent when I started struggling with my own faith in my 20s. I was going through a really dark period, battling depression and feeling completely lost. During those nights when I couldn't sleep, when the weight of life felt unbearable, I'd think about those 3 days. If Jesus really went to hell, the actual place of separation from God, of torment and despair, what was that like for him? How could someone who had never sinned experience the full weight of human sin and separation from the Father? I remember lying in bed at 3 a.m, tears streaming down my face, wondering if Jesus understood what it felt like to be completely hopeless. Did he know what it was like to feel abandoned by God? Because that's exactly how I felt. I felt like I was living in my own version of hell, cut off from joy, from peace, from any sense of divine presence. And if Jesus had really been to that place, if he had really experienced that kind of spiritual darkness, then maybe he truly understood my pain. These questions followed me into my acting career. Every role I took, every character I played, I found myself drawn to stories about redemption, about characters who had to descend into darkness before they could find light. But the questions about Jesus and hell remained unanswered, like a constant ache in my soul. I'd pray about it sometimes, asking God to help me understand, but the silence felt deafening. I started to wonder if some mysteries were meant to stay mysteries, if some questions were too big for human comprehension. Then came the call that changed my life forever, the audition for The Chosen. When I first read the script and realized they wanted me to audition for Jesus, I was terrified. How do you portray the Son of God? How do you capture the humanity and divinity of someone who is perfect love incarnate? But more than that, how do you portray someone whose story includes 3 days in hell that nobody really talks about? The weight of that responsibility felt crushing. During the first few seasons of filming The Chosen, I threw myself into studying everything I could about Jesus. I read the Gospels over and over, studied historical context, learned about first-century Jewish culture. But whenever I came to passages about the resurrection, those 3 days haunted me. The Gospels are mostly silent about what happened between Good Friday evening and Easter morning. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John give us the crucifixion and the empty tomb, but the in-between remains mysterious. As we finished filming Season 5 a few months ago and started preparing for Season 6, this question intensified. Playing Jesus had changed me profoundly. I felt closer to him than I ever had before, but that closeness made the mystery even more urgent. How could I portray his resurrection joy without understanding his descent into hell? How could I capture the full scope of his love without grasping the depths of his sacrifice? The question wasn't academic anymore, it was deeply personal, spiritually essential. I started having dreams about those 3 days, but they were fragmented, confusing. I'd see darkness, hear voices, feel this overwhelming sense of separation and anguish, but I could never make sense of them. I'd wake up feeling disturbed, like my subconscious was trying to process something my conscious mind couldn't grasp. I began to pray more specifically, more desperately. Jesus, what happened to you during those 3 days? Help me understand. I need to know. The breakthrough came 3 weeks ago during a particularly difficult day of preparation for season 6. We were working on scenes that would deal with Jesus' final hours, and the emotional weight was enormous. I went home that night feeling spiritually and emotionally drained, like I had been carrying the weight of the world all day. I fell into bed and prayed with more intensity than I had in months. Jesus, I can't keep wondering about this. If you went to hell for me, I need to understand what that means. Please, show me. That night, I had the most vivid, life-changing dream of my entire life. But it wasn't really a dream, it was an encounter, a visitation, a divine appointment. I found myself in a place that was somehow both physical and spiritual, both familiar and completely otherworldly. There was light, but not the kind of light we know on earth. This was light that had warmth, personality, love radiating from every beam. And then I saw him, Jesus, more real and present than anything I had ever experienced. Before I continue, I'd love to know, where are you right now as you're listening to this? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment below and let me know. Getting back to what I was experiencing, he looked exactly like I had imagined him during all those hours of filming, but infinitely more alive, more radiant, more full of joy and peace. His eyes held depths of compassion that made me want to weep with relief. He smiled at me, and in that smile was the answer to every question I had ever carried about whether God really loved me. Jonathan, he said, and his voice was like coming home after years of wandering. You've been carrying a heavy question, haven't you? I could barely speak. Here was Jesus himself standing before me, acknowledging the question that had tormented me for decades. Lord, I managed to whisper, I need to know. What happened during those 3 days? Did you really go to hell? What was it like? I've been trying to understand your sacrifice, but I feel like I'm missing the most important part. He nodded with such understanding, such gentleness, like he had been waiting for this conversation as long as I had. Walk with me, he said, and suddenly we were moving through what seemed like different dimensions of reality. Sometimes we were in a garden that reminded me of Eden, sometimes in a place that felt like the deepest parts of my own heart, sometimes in spaces that my human mind couldn't even begin to categorize. The question you're asking, he continued, comes from a heart that wants to understand the depths of love. That's beautiful, but you're asking the wrong question. I was confused. How could wanting to understand his descent into hell be the wrong question? I don't understand, Lord, I said. Everyone talks about you descending into hell for 3 days. The Apostles' Creed says it. Theologians debate it. Preachers mention it. If you didn't go to hell during those 3 days, then what really happened? Where were you? What were you doing while your body lay in the tomb? Jesus stopped walking and turned to face me directly. His expression was so full of love and patience, like a father preparing to explain something profound to a beloved child. Jonathan, what do you think hell is? He asked. I started to give him the traditional answers: separation from God, eternal punishment, a place of torment. But he gently raised his hand. Those are human attempts to describe something that transcends human understanding. Let me show you what really happened during those 3 days. But first, you need to understand what hell actually is. He gestured around us, and suddenly I could sense layers of reality I had never perceived before. Hell isn't a place I went to after my crucifixion, he said. Hell is separation from the Father's love. Hell is carrying the weight of sin and shame alone. Hell is feeling abandoned by God. Jonathan, I experienced hell on the cross itself. Those 3 hours of darkness when I cried, my God, why have you forsaken me? That was my descent into hell. That was when I experienced the fullest separation from divine love that any being could ever endure. As he spoke these words, the atmosphere around us changed. I could feel the weight of what he was describing, not as mere theological concept, but as lived reality. During those 3 hours on the cross, Jesus continued, I experienced every moment of hell that humanity would ever deserve. Every addiction, every betrayal, every moment of despair, every feeling of God's absence, I absorbed it all. The Father had to turn his face away from me because I had become sin itself. Those weren't just physical hours, Jonathan. In the spiritual realm, I experienced eternity separated from love. Tears started flowing down my face as the magnitude of what he was saying hit me. You mean, you didn't go to hell after you died? You experienced hell while you were dying? He nodded, his own eyes filling with infinite compassion. The moment I breathed my last, the separation ended. The moment my heart stopped beating, I was fully restored to fellowship with the Father. What happened next wasn't descent into hell, it was the greatest rescue mission in the history of creation. But, Lord, I said, still trying to process this revelation, what about all the teaching that says you descended into hell? What about the Apostles' Creed? What about the idea that you had to suffer in hell to pay the full price for our sins? Jesus smiled gently. Human language is limited, Jonathan. When the early church said, I descended into hell, they were trying to express the depth of my sacrifice. But they were describing what happened on the cross, not what happened after. The cross was hell. Everything after was victory. He began walking again, and with each step, the environment around us became more beautiful, more filled with light and life. Let me tell you what really happened during those 3 days, he said. The moment my spirit left my body, I was immediately in the presence of the Father. No separation, no torment, no suffering. Instead, I was greeted with joy that shook the foundations of heaven itself. The Father said, it is finished, the price is paid. Now comes the celebration. But Jesus, I interrupted, what about all the souls who died before you came? What about Abraham and Moses and David? Weren't they waiting in some kind of prison until you could free them? His face lit up with delight. Now you're asking the right questions. Yes, there were souls waiting, but not in torment. They were in a place of peace, a place of hope, waiting for the moment when the door to eternal life would be thrown wide open. And that's exactly what I spent those 3 days doing. As he spoke, I began to see visions of what he was describing. Instead of darkness and suffering, I saw light and reunion. Instead of Jesus battling demons in hell, I saw him walking through realms of consciousness, visiting every soul who had ever lived with faith, with hope, with love in their hearts. The first day, he said, I spent with those who had died in faith before my incarnation. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David, the prophets. Imagine their joy when they saw that everything they had believed in was true. The vision was overwhelmingly beautiful. I saw Jesus embracing Abraham, laughing with Moses, celebrating with David. I saw tears of joy and recognition as these faithful souls realized that their long wait was over. They had trusted in promises they couldn't fully see. Jesus explained. Now they were face to face with the fulfillment of every promise God had ever made. The first day wasn't about suffering, Jonathan. It was about the greatest family reunion in history. But that was just the beginning, he continued, his excitement growing. The second day, I visited every soul who had ever lived, not just the obviously faithful ones. I went to everyone who had shown even a glimmer of love, of kindness, of hope. The woman who had never heard my name, but who spent her life caring for orphans. The man who didn't know theology, but who consistently chose compassion over cruelty. I went to them all with the same message. You are loved. You are chosen. Welcome home. I was stunned. You mean you visited everyone who had ever died, not just believers? His smile was radiant. Jonathan, love is bigger than theology. Grace is wider than doctrine. I came for every human heart that had ever chosen light over darkness, even if they didn't understand the source of that light. My sacrifice wasn't limited by human understanding of my sacrifice. It was as vast as the Father's love itself, which means it was infinite. The implications of what he was saying began to dawn on me. So those 3 days weren't about you suffering more. They were about you sharing the victory with everyone who had ever lived in faith and love. He nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. The suffering was complete on the cross. Those 3 days were pure celebration, pure joy, pure reunion. I got to personally tell millions of souls that their faith had not been in vain, that their love had been seen, that their hope was now fulfilled. But Jesus, I said, still processing this revolutionary understanding, what about hell as a place? What about eternal punishment? What about Satan and demons? His expression grew more serious, but still filled with love. Hell is real, Jonathan, but not the way humans have imagined it. Hell is the natural consequence of completely rejecting love. It's not a place I send people. It's a condition people create by consistently choosing separation from love. And even there, my grace pursues them. During the third day, he continued, I descended to the deepest places of spiritual darkness, not to suffer, but to offer hope to those who thought they were beyond hope. Even there, even in the depths of despair and separation, I proclaimed the same message. It's not too late. Love is stronger than your worst choices. Come home. Some souls who had been trapped in cycles of hatred and selfishness heard that message and chose love for the first time in ages. Others turned away, preferring their familiar darkness to unfamiliar light. I felt overwhelmed by the scope of what he was describing. So even in hell, you were offering salvation? He looked at me with eyes full of infinite compassion. Jonathan, my love doesn't have boundaries. My grace doesn't have expiration dates. My mercy doesn't have limitations. Those 3 days weren't about fulfilling some cosmic legal requirement. They were about ensuring that every soul who had ever existed got to hear, personally and directly from me, that they were loved beyond measure. But the most important part, Jesus continued, the part that will transform how you understand everything, is what happened next. On that third day, as I was preparing to return to my body and rise from the dead, the Father showed me something that took my breath away. He showed me every soul who would ever live in the future, including you, Jonathan. He showed me every person who would watch this video, every person who would hear this story. The vision he was describing began to materialize around us. I saw faces, millions of faces stretching into the future, young and old, from every nation and culture and background. I saw their struggles, Jesus said, his voice filled with emotion. I saw their doubts, their pain, their questions about whether they were really loved, whether their lives really mattered, whether forgiveness was really possible for them. And I saw how the truth about those 3 days could set them free from so much unnecessary fear and guilt. That's when the Father gave me the most important mission of those 3 days, he continued. Not just to visit the souls of the past, but to prepare hope for the souls of the future. Every person who would ever wonder if my love was strong enough for their worst moments, every person who would ever fear that their sins were too great for my grace, every person who would ever feel like they were beyond redemption, I spent time preparing personal messages of love for each one of them. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. You mean, during those 3 days, you were thinking about us? About people who wouldn't be born for centuries? His smile was so radiant it seemed to light up all of creation. Jonathan, love transcends time. On that third day, I looked into the future and saw you as a little boy asking Mrs. Patterson about those 3 days. I saw your teenage struggles, your young adult crisis of faith, your questions about whether I understood your pain, and I prepared this very conversation we're having right now. The realization hit me like a wave. This wasn't just a dream or a vision, this was a moment that had been planned before the foundation of the world. Every person who has ever wondered what I did during those 3 days, Jesus continued, has been carrying a question that goes deeper than curiosity. They're really asking, do you love me enough to go to the very worst places for me? Do you understand the depths of my pain? Have you experienced the darkness I sometimes feel? And the answer, he said, placing his hand on my shoulder, is yes, but not the way they've imagined. I didn't spend 3 days in hell suffering for them. I spent 3 eternal hours on the cross, experiencing every hell they would ever face. The 3 days after were about preparing a celebration big enough to welcome them home. The 3 days were about making sure that every soul who would ever live would have a personal invitation to eternal joy. As he spoke these words, I felt something shift deep in my spirit. The question that had tormented me for decades wasn't just answered, it was transformed. I had been asking about Jesus' suffering, but he wanted to tell me about his joy. I had been focused on his descent into hell, but he wanted to show me his ascent into hope. The real question, Jonathan, he said, isn't did I go to hell for 3 days? The real question is, how big is my love, and how far will it reach? And the answer to that question, he continued, his voice rising with excitement, is what I want you to share with everyone who needs to hear it. My love is bigger than their worst imagination of hell. My grace reaches further than their deepest descent into darkness. My hope is stronger than their most persistent despair. Those 3 days weren't the dark chapter of my story. They were the joyful foundation of every good thing that would ever happen in human hearts. Now let me tell you the 10 truths I learned during those 3 days. Jesus said, truths that will revolutionize how you understand love, grace, and eternal life. These aren't theological concepts. Jonathan, these are realities I experienced firsthand while visiting every soul who had ever lived and preparing messages for every soul who ever would live. His voice carried an authority that made every word feel like it was reshaping my understanding of everything I thought I knew about God and eternity. The first truth, hell is not a place, it's a condition. It's not somewhere you go, it's something you create by consistently choosing separation from love. I didn't have to visit hell as a location because I had already experienced hell as a reality on the cross. Every moment of separation, every feeling of abandonment, every consequence of sin, I absorbed it all in those 3 hours of darkness. The worst hell anyone could ever experience. I experienced it completely so they would never have to. The second truth, those 3 days were the greatest rescue mission in history, not additional suffering. The moment my physical heart stopped beating, my spiritual heart was flooded with joy because the separation was over. The Father and I were reunited, and immediately we began the work of personally inviting every soul who had ever lived to share in that reunion. It wasn't about me enduring more pain, it was about me sharing infinite joy with everyone who had been waiting for hope. The third truth, every person who ever lived got a personal invitation from me. Not just the obviously religious ones, not just those who knew my name. Everyone who had ever shown love, kindness, compassion, or hope, they all received a direct personal visit from me during those 3 days. The woman who never heard the gospel but spent her life feeding hungry children got the same loving invitation as the prophet who spoke my words for decades. Love recognizes love, regardless of labels or doctrines. The fourth truth, faith is bigger than theology. During those 3 days, I met souls who had perfect theology but hearts filled with judgment and hatred, and I met souls who couldn't have passed a single theological test but whose hearts overflowed with love and mercy. Guess which ones were ready for heaven? Faith isn't about having the right answers, it's about having a heart that chooses love over fear, hope over despair, forgiveness over revenge. That's what I was looking for in every soul I visited. The fifth truth, my grace doesn't end at physical death, even in the deepest places of spiritual darkness. Even among souls who thought they were beyond redemption, I proclaimed the same message. It's not too late. Love is stronger than your worst choices. Some who had spent lifetimes choosing darkness heard that message and chose light for the first time. Others, even offered perfect love, still preferred their familiar pain to unfamiliar joy. Grace is always offered, but it must be received. The sixth truth, time doesn't limit love. During those 3 days, I was simultaneously visiting souls from the past and preparing messages for souls in the future. I saw every person who would ever live, including everyone who will hear this message. I saw their specific struggles, their unique questions, their individual needs for hope. Each person's invitation to eternal life was personally crafted by me with their heart in mind. You weren't an afterthought, Jonathan, you were specifically planned for. The seventh truth, salvation is both immediate and eternal. The moment any soul says yes to love, whether in life or in that place of waiting after death, they are immediately transformed from death to life, from separation to union, from fear to joy. But that transformation isn't just for a moment, it's for all eternity. The life I offer doesn't just last forever, it gets better forever. Every day in my presence is better than the day before, and it never stops improving. The eighth truth: hell is not my punishment, it's separation's natural consequence. I don't send anyone to hell. Hell is what happens when someone consistently chooses separation from love. It's like a person who refuses to eat, eventually starving, or someone who refuses water, eventually dying of thirst. Hell is the soul starvation that comes from rejecting the only source of spiritual nourishment. Even there, even in that self-imposed exile, my love keeps reaching out, hoping they'll change their mind. The ninth truth: heaven is not a reward, it's a relationship. People often think of eternal life as payment for good behavior, but it's actually the natural result of loving relationship with me. When someone truly knows me and loves me, they want to spend eternity with me, not because they have to, but because they can't imagine anything better. Heaven isn't somewhere you earn your way into. It's somewhere you're invited into because you've discovered that love is the only thing worth living for. The 10th truth: every question about God's justice is answered by understanding God's love. People wonder how a loving God could allow hell to exist, but they're missing the point. Hell exists because love must be chosen, not forced. A love that's compelled isn't love at all, it's coercion. God's justice isn't about punishment, it's about protecting the freedom that makes love possible. Those who choose separation get what they choose. Those who choose union get what they choose. Both choices are honored because love requires freedom. But, Jonathan, Jesus continued, understanding these truths intellectually isn't enough. During those 3 days, I didn't just visit souls to share information. I came to transform hearts through experience. Let me show you what it felt like to be on the receiving end of those visits. Close your eyes and let your heart experience what billions of souls experienced when I came to them with the message that their waiting was over. Their faith had been vindicated, their hope was about to be fulfilled. As I closed my eyes, I was transported into the experience of a soul who had been waiting in that place between death and resurrection. I felt the anticipation that had built over centuries, the hope mixed with uncertainty, the faith that had been tested by time but hadn't wavered. And then I felt his presence approaching, not as judge, but as friend. Not as someone coming to evaluate my worthiness, but as someone coming to celebrate my homecoming. The relief was indescribable. Welcome home. I heard him say to this soul I was experiencing, and in those words was the fulfillment of every promise God had ever made. Your faith was not in vain. Your hope was not misplaced. Your love was seen and treasured and celebrated every moment you expressed it. Now come and see what I've been preparing for you since the foundation of the world. The joy that flooded through this soul was like being born again, but into a reality so beautiful it made earthly life seem like black and white compared to infinite color. Then I experienced what it was like to be a soul who had never heard the gospel, but had lived with love and compassion as their guiding principles. When Jesus appeared to this soul, there was no condemnation for not knowing the right theology, no punishment for not being born in the right place at the right time. Instead, there was recognition. I know you, he said. Every act of kindness you showed was a response to my love working through you. You may not have known my name, but you knew my heart. You lived my message without realizing it came from me. The beauty of that encounter overwhelmed me. Here was divine love meeting human love, perfect justice embracing imperfect goodness, eternal truth recognizing temporal faithfulness. This soul hadn't needed perfect doctrine, they had lived with perfect love. They hadn't needed to understand the mechanics of salvation, they had embodied the heart of salvation. Your love was always a reflection of my love, Jesus told them. Now let me show you where that love was leading all along. Then I experienced something that shocked me even more deeply. I felt what it was like to be a soul trapped in deep spiritual darkness, convinced they were beyond redemption, certain that their choices had placed them permanently outside the reach of grace. When Jesus appeared to this soul, the first emotion wasn't fear or judgment, it was surprise. You came here, to this place, for me? And Jesus' response was immediate and emphatic. Especially for you, you're exactly who I came to save. But I've done terrible things, this soul protested. I've hurt people. I've chosen selfishness over love, again and again. I've rejected every chance at goodness I was ever given. Jesus smiled with infinite compassion. And I chose to experience the consequences of all those choices on the cross so you wouldn't have to experience them forever. Your worst day doesn't disqualify you from my best love. Your biggest mistakes don't eliminate my greatest grace. The question isn't whether you're good enough for my love. The question is whether you're ready to receive it. As I witnessed this exchange, I realized that even in the deepest places of despair, Jesus wasn't there as conqueror or judge. He was there as rescuer and friend. He hadn't come to gloat over victory or to enforce punishment. He had come to offer hope to those who thought hope was impossible, to extend love to those who believed they were unlovable, to provide light to those who had convinced themselves they belonged in darkness. Some received that offer with tears of grateful relief. Others, tragically, turned away, preferring familiar pain to unfamiliar grace. The most beautiful part, Jesus said as the visions faded and I opened my eyes, was that each encounter was perfectly tailored to that individual soul. Abraham needed to see that his faith in promises he couldn't fully understand had led to fulfillment beyond his wildest imagination. Moses needed to know that the law he had received was always meant to point toward love. David needed to experience forgiveness that was bigger than his biggest failures. The unnamed woman who died showing kindness needed to discover that her love had been seen and treasured by the source of all love. And every person who will ever hear this message, he continued looking directly at me, needs to know that their specific invitation has already been prepared. During those 3 days, I saw the person who struggles with addiction and prepared a message about how love is stronger than any compulsion. I saw the person who battles with same-sex attraction and prepared a message about how they are loved exactly as they are, without condition or reservation. I saw the person who has made terrible mistakes and prepared a message about how grace is bigger than guilt. I saw the person who feels invisible and prepared a message about how they are seen and valued beyond measure. I saw the person who struggles with mental illness and prepared a message about how their brain chemistry doesn't change their soul's worth. I saw the person who has been abused and prepared a message about how they are not damaged goods but beloved treasures. I saw the person who has hurt others and prepared a message about how redemption is always possible for those who truly want it. I saw the person who questions whether God really exists and prepared a message about how their honest doubt is more precious to me than dishonest faith. I saw the person who has been wounded by churches and religious people and prepared a message about how human failure doesn't reflect divine character. I saw the person who feels like they're not religious enough and prepared a message about how relationship matters more than ritual, love matters more than law. Jonathan, do you understand what this means? Jesus asked, his voice filled with excitement. It means that every person who has ever wondered if they're truly loved, truly accepted, truly valuable, they can stop wondering. The answer is yes, with an enthusiasm that shook the foundations of heaven during those 3 days. Every person who has ever feared that their worst moments define them can stop fearing. Every person who has ever doubted whether forgiveness is really possible for them can stop doubting. The 3 days between my death and resurrection weren't about additional suffering, they were about comprehensive invitation. They weren't about fulfilling legal requirements, they were about expressing unlimited love. They weren't about cosmic bookkeeping, they were about personal relationship with every soul who had ever breathed or ever would breathe. The message I want you to share isn't, look how much I suffered for you, it's, look how much I love you and how far that love reaches. But the most important thing I learned during those 3 days, Jesus said, his voice becoming even more tender, was how desperately every human heart longs to be known and loved without condition. Every soul I visited, from the most faithful prophet to the most broken sinner, carried the same deep need, the need to be truly seen, truly understood, and truly loved despite their flaws and failures. That's what I was offering everyone, and that's what I'm still offering everyone today. People think the gospel is complicated, he continued, but it's actually the simplest message in the universe. You are loved. Not because of what you've done or haven't done, not because of what you believe or don't believe, not because of how good you are or aren't. You are loved because love is who I am, and I made you to be the recipient of that love. Everything else, doctrine, theology, rules, rituals, are just human attempts to understand or organize that one foundational truth. During those 3 days, I met religious leaders who had made faith complicated and missed the simple truth of love. I met simple people who had never studied theology but who had lived love every day of their lives. Guess which ones were ready for heaven? The ones who had learned to love well, regardless of how much they knew about God. Love is the only curriculum that matters for eternity. Everything else is just commentary. And here's what might surprise people the most. Jesus said with a smile that seemed to light up the entire universe, "Heaven isn't about being perfect, it's about being loved perfectly." The people who worry they're not good enough for heaven are missing the point. Nobody is good enough for heaven based on their own goodness. Everyone is welcomed into heaven based on my goodness, extended to them as a gift. The only requirement for receiving a gift is being willing to accept it. So when people ask what happened during those 3 days, Jesus concluded this section of his teaching. Tell them this: I spent 3 days doing what I've been doing every day since reaching out to every human heart, with a love that's bigger than their fears, stronger than their failures, and more persistent than their doubts. I spent 3 days preparing personal invitations for every soul who would ever wonder if they matter to God. The answer is yes, you matter. You're loved, you're invited, and nothing you've done or haven't done changes that. As Jesus finished sharing these revelations, something shifted in the atmosphere around us. The teaching was complete, but I could sense that something even more profound was about to happen. His expression changed from that of teacher to something infinitely more tender, more personal. "Now, Jonathan," he said, "I need you to experience personally what every soul felt when they received their invitation. I need you to feel what it's like to be on the receiving end of love that has no conditions, no limits, no expiration date." Before I could even process what was happening, I felt myself being enveloped in love so pure, so complete, that it defied every category my human mind had for understanding emotion. This wasn't the kind of love I had experienced from family or friends, as beautiful as those loves are. This was love without any agenda, without any conditions, without any possibility of disappointment or withdrawal. It was like being seen completely, every flaw, every failure, every secret shame, and being celebrated anyway. Not tolerated, not overlooked, but genuinely celebrated as precious and valuable. In that moment, every question I had ever carried about my own worth melted away. Every insecurity about whether I was good enough, smart enough, spiritual enough, gone. Every fear about whether my mistakes had permanently damaged me dissolved. Every doubt about whether someone like me could really be loved by the creator of the universe, obliterated by the sheer force of experienced truth. I felt like I was being loved not despite who I was, but precisely because of who I was, as if God had been waiting my whole life for the chance to show me how much he delighted in me. This, Jesus said softly, is what every person who has ever lived was created to experience. This is their birthright as my beloved children. This is what I was offering to every soul I visited during those 3 days, and this is what I'm offering to every soul who will ever live. Not religious obligation, not moral improvement programs, not theological correctness, but this unconditional, unlimited, transformative love that makes everything else fade into insignificance by comparison. The tears I had been holding back for decades finally came. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief, so profound they seemed to be releasing pain I didn't even know I had been carrying. "Lord," I whispered, "I've spent my whole life trying to be good enough for you. I've worried about disappointing you, about not being worthy of the role of playing you, about whether my own struggles and questions disqualified me from representing your love." His laughter was like music, filled with joy and gentle amusement at my misunderstanding. "Jonathan, you can't earn what you already have. You can't become worthy of something I've already given you freely. You can't disappoint someone who has never had expectations based on your performance. I didn't choose you to play me because you were perfect. I chose you because I love you, and love always wants to share itself. Your struggles don't disqualify you. They make you relatable to others who struggle. Your questions don't disappoint me. They show me you're taking our relationship seriously." As he spoke, I felt years of performance-based anxiety melting away. All the pressure I had put on myself to be a perfect representative of Jesus, all the fear that my human flaws might somehow dishonor him, All the weight of trying to live up to an impossible standard, it was all unnecessary. He had never asked me to be perfect. He had only asked me to be honest about being imperfect while being deeply loved anyway. Your authenticity honors me more than your perfection ever could. He said, because authenticity allows others to see that my love is for real people, not just religious ideals. Then something extraordinary happened. Jesus began showing me how he saw every person who would ever watch this video, every person who would ever hear this message about those 3 days. I saw them through his eyes, and what I saw took my breath away. He didn't see their flaws first, he saw their hearts first. He didn't see their failures first, he saw their longings first. He didn't see their struggles first, he saw their courage in continuing to hope despite those struggles. I saw a woman who had been carrying shame about her past for 20 years, and Jesus' first thought about her wasn't about what she had done wrong, it was about how brave she had been to keep loving her children well despite her pain. I saw a man who battled addiction daily, and Jesus' first observation wasn't about his weakness, it was about the strength it took to keep fighting for recovery. I saw a teenager struggling with identity and purpose, and Jesus' immediate response wasn't concern about their confusion, it was celebration of their sensitive heart that cared so deeply about finding truth. "Do you see?" Jesus asked, his voice filled with emotion. "This is how I see every person. Not as problems to be solved or projects to be improved, but as treasures to be celebrated." During those 3 days, when I visited each soul personally, I wasn't conducting evaluations, I was throwing homecoming parties. I wasn't checking off requirements. I was expressing delight in each unique person I had created. The joy I felt wasn't because they had earned it, it was because love naturally celebrates its beloved. The vision continued, and I saw person after person through his eyes of love. The single mother working 3 jobs, he saw her sacrificial heart. The businessman struggling with integrity in a corrupt industry, he saw his internal battle to do right. The elderly woman forgotten in a nursing home, he saw the prayers she whispered daily for family members who never visited. The young person questioning their faith, he saw their hunger for authentic relationship with him. None of them were projects to him. All of them were delights. "Jonathan, this is the message I need you to share," Jesus said, and I could hear the urgency in his voice. People are exhausting themselves trying to become worthy of love they already have. They're working so hard to earn acceptance they already possess. They're afraid of disappointing someone who is actually celebrating them. During those 3 days, the message I gave to every soul was the same message I want to give to every person today. Stop trying to become worthy of my love. You already are. Start enjoying it. As this truth settled into my heart, I felt something I had never experienced before, complete rest. Not physical rest, but soul rest. The kind of rest that comes when you finally stop trying to prove yourself and start trusting that you're already accepted. The kind of rest that comes when you stop performing for approval and start receiving love as a gift. This is what I meant when I said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest," Jesus explained. I wasn't talking about taking a nap, I was talking about this, the rest that comes from knowing you're loved without conditions. "But Lord," I said, still processing this overwhelming experience of unconditional love, "what about people who have really hurt others? What about people who have made choices that cause terrible pain? Don't some people need to earn forgiveness?" His expression grew incredibly tender. "Jonathan, forgiveness isn't something people earn. It's something I give because of who I am, not because of who they are." During those 3 days, I met souls who had caused tremendous harm, and you know what I said to them? "You're forgiven, not because they deserved it, but because I chose it. Not because the harm they caused didn't matter, but because my love is bigger than the harm they caused." The question was never whether they were worthy of forgiveness, the question was whether they were willing to receive it. Some were so overwhelmed by relief, they wept for what felt like centuries. Others were so convinced they didn't deserve it that they walked away from it. But it was offered to all with the same generosity. I thought about all the people who struggle with guilt, who lie awake at night remembering their worst moments, who believe their mistakes have permanently disqualified them from God's love. "What would you say to them?" I asked. His smile was radiant. I would say exactly what I said to every soul during those 3 days who carried the same burden. Your worst day doesn't define you. Your biggest mistake doesn't disqualify you. Your deepest shame doesn't change my heart toward you. I know everything you've ever done, and I love you anyway, not with reluctance, but with joy. The cross wasn't just about paying a price, he continued. It was about removing every barrier between my heart and human hearts. Every wall of shame, every fortress of guilt, every prison of regret demolished. When I said, "It is finished," I wasn't just talking about completing a transaction. I was declaring that every reason people might think I couldn't love them had been eliminated forever. There's nothing left to separate them from my love except their own unwillingness to receive it. As Jesus spoke these words, I felt the last of my own barriers crumbling. The fear that I wasn't spiritual enough to represent him, the worry that my questions and doubts made me unworthy, the anxiety that I might somehow damage his reputation through my human imperfections. All of it dissolved in the face of love, this complete, this unconditional, this celebrating. I finally understood what grace really meant. Not God tolerating me despite my flaws, but God delighting in me as his beloved son. Now, do you understand, Jesus asked, why those 3 days weren't about additional suffering? They were about additional celebration. Every soul I visited received this same experience of complete acceptance, unconditional love, and unshakable worth. The hell I experienced was on the cross, when I absorbed every consequence of separation from love that anyone would ever face. The 3 days after were pure heaven, the joy of reuniting with the Father and sharing that joy with everyone who had ever lived or ever would live. The implications of what I was experiencing began to dawn on me. This wasn't just about understanding those 3 days. This was about understanding the entire gospel. It wasn't a message about becoming good enough for God. It was a message about realizing you're already beloved by God. It wasn't about earning your way into heaven. It was about accepting your invitation to experience heaven's love starting right now. It wasn't about religious performance. It was about personal relationship with the one who created you specifically because he wanted you to exist. Every person who watches this video, Jesus said, looking directly at me with eyes full of love and hope, needs to know that what you're experiencing right now is available to them too. Not someday, not after they get their lives together, not after they become better people right now. Today, this moment, my love for them is exactly the same as my love for you. Complete, unconditional, celebratory, transformative. They don't need to understand theology to experience it. They don't need to have perfect faith to receive it. They just need to be willing to let themselves be loved. And for those who think they've gone too far, sinned too much, hurt too many people, tell them about the souls I met during those 3 days who thought the same thing. Tell them about the relief on their faces when they discovered that my grace is bigger than their worst choices, that my love is stronger than their deepest regrets, that my acceptance is more powerful than their harshest self-judgment. Tell them that if I could love those souls completely, I can certainly love them completely too. The message of those 3 days, Jesus said, as I felt our time together beginning to wind down, isn't, "Look what I had to endure for you, though I was willing to endure anything for love." The message is, "Look what I prepared for you." During those 3 days, I prepared celebrations for every soul who would ever say yes to love. I prepared personal welcomes for every heart that would ever choose hope over despair. I prepared eternal joy for every person who would ever trust that they're worthy of being loved. As he spoke these final words of this section, I felt myself being filled with a mission, a calling, a deep sense of purpose. Not the heavy burden of trying to represent Jesus perfectly, but the joyful privilege of sharing the love I had experienced with everyone who needed to hear it. "This is why you're here, Jonathan," he said. "Not to be perfect, but to be authentic about being imperfect while being perfectly loved. People don't need to see flawless faith, they need to see real faith, complete with questions and struggles and doubts, being met with unchanging love." The emotional climax of our encounter reached its peak as I realized that this conversation, this entire experience, had been planned for me personally during those 3 days, between his death and resurrection. While he was visiting souls from the past, he had also prepared this moment, this message, This experience of overwhelming love for someone who wouldn't be born for centuries, the personal nature of his love, the individual attention he had given to my specific needs and questions, the way he had known exactly what my heart needed to hear was all too much. I wept with gratitude, with relief, with joy that felt too big for my human heart to contain. As the vision began to fade and I felt myself returning from this divine encounter, Jesus placed both hands on my shoulders one final time. Jonathan, when you wake up, you might be tempted to wonder if this was real or just a dream, but look at your heart. Look at how the question that has tormented you for decades has been replaced with peace. Look at how your understanding of my love has been transformed from something you hoped for to something you've experienced. That's not the result of imagination, that's the result of truth entering a human heart and changing everything it touches. When I opened my eyes in my bed that morning, everything was different. The question that had haunted me since childhood was gone, replaced by a deep, settled peace about Jesus' love and the true meaning of those 3 days. Instead of wondering if I was worthy to portray him, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the privilege of sharing his love with others. Instead of carrying the weight of spiritual performance, I felt the freedom of being deeply loved exactly as I am. The transformation was so complete, so obvious, that I knew this had been more than a dream, it had been a divine appointment. Now I understand why I needed to share this with you. Somewhere out there, someone is carrying the same questions I carried for decades. Someone is wondering if they're really loved by God, if their mistakes have disqualified them from grace, if they're worthy of the love that created the universe. Someone needs to know that those 3 days weren't about additional suffering for Jesus. They were about additional celebration for everyone who would ever choose love. Over fear, hope over despair, relationship with God over separation from God. So let me pray for you the way Jesus prayed for every soul he visited during those 3 days. Father God, I thank you that the person reading these words right now is precious to you beyond measure. I thank you that during those 3 days, you saw them specifically and prepared a personal message of love just for them. Help them to receive not just the information about those 3 days, but the transformation that comes from experiencing your unconditional love. Let them know in their hearts that they are seen, known, valued, and celebrated by you. Remove every barrier of shame, guilt, fear, or unworthiness that might keep them from fully receiving your love. Help them to understand that your grace is bigger than their worst choices, your love is stronger than their deepest regrets, and your acceptance is more powerful than their harshest self-judgment. The truth about those 3 days is this: they weren't about Jesus suffering more for you, they were about Jesus preparing more joy for you. He didn't descend into additional torment, he ascended into ultimate celebration of every soul who would ever choose to be loved by the source of all love. The question isn't whether you're worthy of that love, the question is whether you're ready to receive it. Today, right now, in this moment, you can stop trying to earn what's already been given freely. You can stop performing for approval you already have. You can rest in the truth that you are beloved, not because of what you've done, but because of who you are, God's precious child, created for love, called to love, sustained by love forever. If this message touched your heart, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe and share your own story. In the comments, how has God's love shown up in your life?